At China's National Congress, everything is just perfectly choreographed. Every 5 years, the country's seven most powerful men are revealed, and the exact order they walk out in tells you everything. And at the last one, this man, Xi Jinping, walked out first for a historic third time. It was a clear signal. He's planning to rule for life.
Honestly, the world hasn't seen a Chinese leader with this much raw personal power since Mao Zedong himself, the founder of the People's Republic. But what makes this story just so unbelievable is that when Xi was just a teenager, his entire life was destroyed by Mao's regime. So that really gets us to the heart of the matter. How did a man who was once banished by his own country, an exile, come back to take complete control of it? Okay, let's get into it.
You hear the Mao comparison all the time, right? And it's for a very good reason. Xi has pretty clearly been using Mao's playbook. I mean, from putting his own ideology into the party's constitution to centralizing power in a way we just haven't seen in generations. The parallels are frankly stunning. But their personal connection, well, that's even crazier.
To really get a handle on Xi's rise, you first have to understand the system of power that he inherited, a system that was basically designed and perfected by Mao. And it all starts decades before Xi was even born, right in the middle of a brutal civil war.
So by 1934, Mao's Communist Red Army was losing, and losing badly. They were surrounded, starving. They had one option: a desperate breakout. This kicked off a year-long retreat, covering thousands of miles, that we now know as the Long March. After some just catastrophic losses under other leaders, the party got desperate and handed military command back to Mao. His guerrilla tactics, while incredibly brutal, are what's credited with saving what was left of the army from being completely wiped out.
And here's where it gets wild. In this incredible twist of fate, after a full year of marching and fighting, the few survivors, fewer than 8,000 of them, they finally stumble into a safe haven. It's a guerrilla base in northern China. And the communist revolutionary who was leading that base? A guy named Xi Jinping, who just so happens to be Xi Jinping's father. That one act cemented his family's place right at the top of the party elite.
The Long March basically made Mao the undisputed leader, and he quickly took control of a very specific top-down power structure. Think of it like a pyramid. At the bottom, you've got the Central Committee. They handled the big policy stuff. From that group, a smaller, more powerful body is chosen, the Politburo. But the real power, where the final say on everything happens, is at the very, very top.
And this is the Politburo's Standing Committee. In the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, this tiny group of people holds supreme control over literally everything: the party, the government, and, most importantly, the military. Mao's big promotion landed him right here, at the absolute peak of power.
And from that spot, Mao basically rewrote the rules to make sure he'd rule for life. He had his political philosophy, Mao Zedong thought, declared the party's official, unquestionable guiding principle. What that meant was his ideas could not be challenged. Then, he went and filled all the key government and military jobs with his most loyal followers.
So all that unchecked power, well, it ended in absolute disaster. We're talking famines, purges that cost tens of millions of lives, and it all culminated in the chaos of the Cultural Revolution. After Mao died, the party was desperate to stop another dictatorship from ever happening again, and this kicked off a period of really radical correction and reform. I mean, the shift was like night and day. Mao's era was all about a cult of personality, ideological purity above all else. But the next leader, Deng Xiaoping, he brought in an era of collective leadership. The focus completely shifted to pragmatic economic reform, and, this is huge, term limits were put in to prevent any one person from holding on to power forever.
And here's the key thing Deng did. He deliberately split up the top jobs. He never actually became head of state or the official party leader. By ruling as the de facto leader from other powerful positions, he created a system of power sharing. And that system is what fueled decades of unbelievable economic growth. But it was also the very system that Xi Jinping would later, piece by piece, dismantle. So while all of this is happening in Beijing, where was Xi? Well, his story is one of pure survival and a long, very calculated climb back to the center of power from, well, the absolute fringes of society. During Mao's Cultural Revolution, not even the most elite families were safe. Xi's own father was publicly purged and thrown in prison. And at just 15 years old, Xi himself was kicked out of his elite school and sent to a dirt-poor village, where he actually lived in a cave and did back-breaking labor for years. It was a brutal, brutal lesson. But it taught him one thing. In the CCP, power is everything.
After Mao's death, Xi eventually joined the party, but he did something pretty unexpected. Instead of sticking around Beijing and fighting for a top job, he left for the provinces. For 17 years, he just patiently worked his way up in these rural regions, building a reputation in places like Hubei, cultivating deep ties with the military in Fujian, and finally proving he could handle the big leagues by cleaning up a massive corruption scandal in Shanghai. And this long game totally paid off. By staying out of all the intense rivalries and infighting in Beijing, Xi was seen by the party elders as a safe, maybe even a less ambitious choice. He was a princeling, the son of a revolutionary hero. But his humble career out in the provinces made him seem careful, prudent. So in 2007, they promoted him to the Politburo Standing Committee, completely underestimating the man they had just put one step away from the top. So when Xi finally did take that top spot in 2012, he moved with just stunning speed. He immediately started to undo that system of shared power that Deng Xiaoping had so carefully built, and he started a return to one-man rule. His first big move was this massive anti-corruption campaign, and the scale was just staggering. Hundreds of high-level officials, even top military generals, were arrested and yanked from their positions. On the surface, it looked like he was cleaning up the party, but its real purpose was much more strategic. Let's be honest, the campaign was a purge. It was the perfect weapon for Xi to just eliminate his political rivals and anyone who might stand in the way of his agenda. And every single position that was suddenly left vacant, well, it was quickly filled by one of his own loyal supporters. With his rivals out of the way, Xi started to remake the entire party in his own image. He introduced Xi Jinping thought, making his personal ideology untouchable, just like Mao had. He kept packing the Politburo with his allies. And then came the final move. He completely removed the presidential two-term limit, clearing the path for him to rule for as long as he wants. Which, of course, brings us right back to today. After a decade of just methodically consolidating his power, Xi has achieved a level of control over China that we really haven't seen for half a century. He's fully answered the question we asked at the start. That 2022 National Congress was really the culmination of his whole plan. When the new Politburo Standing Committee was revealed, every single member was a known Xi loyalist. The last few officials who had ties to previous leaders, they were gone. And this is what we're left with. The system of collective leadership is gone, wiped away. Today, there's no one in a position of real power inside the party or the military who isn't a Xi protege. He faces no internal checks, no balances, and zero opposition. He's expected to lead China for as long as he is alive. From a teenage exile living in a cave to becoming the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao, it's a truly remarkable and ruthless story of accumulating power. Which leaves us with one final and pretty critical question. In this new era of one-man rule, with absolutely no one left to challenge him, what comes next for China and for the rest of the world?